So, welcome. I'm Olivia, and this is my recommendations channel. I'm mostly doing books still, but I'm doing books in parks now with my Wheel of Time book series that's going to be basically interminable. I listen to an audiobook on 2x speed while I travel to a park, and then I walk on either the Leon Creek Greenway or the Salado Creek Greenway, or eventually I'm hoping the Riverwalk. I'm drawing a map in my head, and it's probably backwards to you, but anyway, Leon Creek Greenway is the, maybe that's right, because Leon Creek Greenway is the west side. No, yeah, Leon Creek Greenway is the west side. Salado Creek Greenway is on the east side. They connect at Eisenhower Park, and then the Riverwalk goes down the middle. I think that's right from your perspective. Anyway, so I listen to that, and then I walk there for a few minutes while I talk about what I've recently listened to and give some, if I have an opinion about it. If I don't have an opinion, I just, oh, Rand and his father arrive in Emmonsfield. Okay. But if I have an opinion, I'll give it at that point. Anyway, so today we're doing Cape Fear by Nadia Davids. I think if this wasn't my favorite book, it's close. I really enjoyed Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. I'm like, yeah, because I haven't read Lucky Day yet. I need to get, it's on my TBR list, TBR pile. It's just, I'm not there yet. Anyway, I'm summarizing books as I read them this year, so hope that I'll be able to get somewhere on my TBR pile this year, because that's just a disaster. Anyway, so Cape Fever was one of the Fantastic Strangelings book club picks for the year, and I really enjoyed it. I stayed up till 3 in the morning reading it, and then I had to work the next day, and it was a disaster. It was a lot of fun. I always love doing that. So, Cape Fever is the story of Soraya Matas, a young Muslim woman living in South Africa in 1920. The name of the city where Soraya lives is never really given, but since Davids is from Cape Town and the word Cape is in the title, perhaps that's the setting. Now, as I reread this time, every time she'd mention someplace in her city, I would look it up. I would kind of Google Cape Town and whatever, and there were a lot of the things, most of the things she mentions were in Cape Town, so I think that's probably a pretty good guess on my part. Anyway, Soraya has been working since she was 12 and has recently left her job and taken a new position with Mrs. Hadding. I'm not going to trust myself to pronounce that throughout the book. No. I'm going to call her Alice. That's her first name. I called her Mrs. through the script, and it's not going to happen. There's some indication of difficulty with men in the house at Soraya's old job, but she left with a glowing recommendation. Now, it's never stated outright what exactly happened, and I'm not going to speculate. You can draw your own conclusions. But her mother does recommend that she get a bedroom with a lock on the door at her new job. It is clear to Soraya that Alice used to have money, but she's fallen on hard times and had to sell off some of her valuables. In fact, most of her valuables, as we'll find out. So Alice waits until Soraya accepts the position of cook and cleaner to tell her that this is meant to be a live-in position, and she can only return home once every 2 weeks. She gives Soraya a tour of the house and tells her that her son, Timothy, is living in London and has no interest in returning to South Africa. Soraya's room is a little cottage out back that used to belong to Fatima, the previous employee, who's passed away. Soraya's mother has advised her to tell Alice that she cannot read, since not all employers like having educated employees, and she does so. She describes herself as being able to read well enough to get along. She also tells us she has difficulty with writing. This is one of the drivers of the plot. On Soraya's first day at work, Alice reads Soraya's list of tasks to her. In the evening, Soraya finally gets time to unpack. While getting settled in, she can sense a gray woman. Gray women are not really ghosts, but rather the spirits of women who have some kind of score to settle with the living. Soraya is certain that the gray woman is Fatima. Soraya reminisces about the event that ended with her being sent out to work at the age of 12. She was in the habit of taking the children out to the hills and telling them stories. This all ended when she told them about a woman who lives underwater and bleeds 99 drops of blood into the water every day. The blood is black, and a sailor who thinks that she's a squid and he can use her blood to write about his adventure tries to kill her. She kills him to self-defense by flaying the skin from his face. Yeah, let's keep her out of trouble. The story scares the children so much that it scares their parents, so Soraya mom sent her out into service to keep her busy and out of trouble. Soon they settle into a routine. Soraya starts to discover the best ways to make Alice happy. One day Alice brings a painting out of her sitting room that Soraya has never seen before. It's the painting of a young Muslim woman who looks very much like Soraya. For some reason, Alice calls the painting Rosa, which is an odd name for a Muslim woman, just to bring Alice's ability to understand Muslims into sharper relief. Soraya finds the painting captivating. I do find it odd that Soraya, who wears a hijab and has Arabic blessing over bed, doesn't seem bothered at all by a painting of a Muslim woman, and Alice had many other paintings of Muslims in her home, but had to sell all but Rosa. Alice tells Soraya that she was an artist at one time, but that her husband objected to his wife engaging in such an activity, but he would allow her to be an art collector. Soraya remembers the loss of her youngest sibling to the Spanish flu and how her mother was devastated. This is followed by Alice receiving a letter saying that Timothy won't be home for another 3 months or so, which sends her into tailspin. Soraya sees the specter of Fatima again, trying to repair damage to the eyes of the birds in the bird's bedroom, which is a bedroom with wallpaper covered with birds. When Alice recovers from her malaise, she throws herself back into her charity work and offers to put in a good word for Soraya's fiancé Noor with the head of the teachers' college. I don't think I mentioned him before. He's working in a farm trying to save up money to go to the teachers' college so he can get an education and support her and their eventual children when they get married. And so she offers to put in a good word with Noor. When Soraya declines, Alice responds by criticizing Soraya's housework. Eventually, Alice offers to write letters to Noor on behalf of Soraya. Remember, Soraya told Alice that she can neither read nor write. Soraya does have some schooling and can read well enough, but Mrs. Hadding doesn't know that. Sometimes something inside Soraya is uncomfortable with the offer, but she knows that Alice is mercurial, and anyhow, the possibility of having contact with Noor is too tempting, particularly when Alice says that she'll use her own paper and pay the postage for herself. Pay for the postage herself. So every Thursday at dusk, a cursed time in Muslim culture, they sit down and write. She and Noor send coded messages based on their shared pasts to each other, a reference to a place where a specific event occurred, a story that Soraya made up and told to the children of her village. Alice offers to teach Soraya to read and write, offering her opinion that being able to fix thoughts in writing is better than carrying them in your head. Soraya, who's never been taught this, has been taught this is exactly the opposite, because things that people carry in their heads can never be lost or destroyed, does consent to this education anyhow. One day, Alice asks Soraya if she's ever kissed Noor. Soraya denies this, although they have kissed, and Alice suggests that perhaps they could include references to wanting to kiss in the letters. This is a step too far, and Soraya says she doesn't want to, as it would be improper. Soon afterwards, their weekly writing hour starts with literacy education. The first day does not go so well. Mrs. Hadding Alice recites the Lady of Shalott, and inspired by the beauty of Tennyson's language, tells Soraya that she's been improving her letters to Noor by making them more lyrical. Soraya realizes that the coded message of shared history she'd been sending Noor haven't been coming through in the letters, and requests that Alice just write what she says. This offends Alice, and she sends Soraya away. The next morning, Soraya discovers that Alice had let a candle burn all the way down while she was in bed the previous night and could have burned the house down around herself. Alice wants to pick up some spices in the district. The supply that Fatima had built up has finally been used up. Soraya wants to go alone, so she makes a half-hearted attempt at waking Alice, then heads out on her own. When Soraya gets to the spice shop, the Indian girl behind the counter, who's also Muslim, says she's heard about Alice and that there must be something wrong there because, according to rumors, Timothy is intentionally staying away. Of course, she also says there's something wrong with Timothy, and that might be why he's staying away. While she's there, she meets an Irish woman who advises her to hang sage and use salt at the house as barriers and things. When she comes home, Alice is angry with her, so Soraya deflects by telling her the district is run down and every house has someone ill in it, and she brought the only thing that smells good in the district home with her. Soon afterwards, Alice hosts a seance at her house to try to contact the spirit of the son of one of her friends who died in World War I. Who should the medium be but the Irish woman from the spice shop? At first it looks like it's clearly a cold read situation. Miss Turtle, the medium, first says things like the visitor's a young man with dark brown hair, but the deceased had light brown hair. Things like that. Then Miss Turtle says, "No rest for the wicked, Mama. No rest for the wicked." This startles Alice, but Miss Turtle says it was a stray and nothing to do with the seance they just had. Before she leaves, Miss Turtle says that Alice is troubled, and this may cause Soraya's wits to become tangled as well. Soraya goes home soon after this. She tells her mom she's unhappy in the job. No mention of seeing the specter of Fatima or the unsettling mama event of the night of the seance, though. Her mom tells her that neither she nor Soraya's father are getting any younger, and they're worn out by their own jobs. I'm not sure manipulates is the right word, since what she threatens may be going to happen soon anyhow, but let's go with that. Her mom manipulates her into promising to stay on at Alice's by telling her that her younger siblings may have to start going out into the world to earn money to help the family. So Soraya promises to stay with Alice in order to protect her siblings a while longer. When she returns, Alice tells her that one day off every 2 weeks is too much time off for Soraya. She says she wants Soraya to stay with her until Timothy's visit. She's worried about Timothy's girlfriend, thinking she might be keeping Timothy from visiting. She tells Soraya that no matter what condition Timothy might have come home from the Warren, she would love him just the same. Then she admits that Timothy came home with PTSD. They didn't call it that, but that's what it is. Finally, Soraya gets her to agree one Sunday off a month so she can visit her family. The specter of Fatima indicates that Soraya should poison Alice, which Soraya refuses to do, though she does spit in Alice's dinner. Soraya didn't understand just how bad Alice's finances are until the day that a man comes to appraise Rosa. She knows Alice loves Rosa, so things must be pretty dire. Soraya receives a new letter from Noor saying he's been denied the place at the teacher's college that he was promised. Alice reassures Soraya that Noor will certainly find a place in the future year, and Soraya writes back to tell him just that. Then Noor stops writing entirely. Soraya's father passes away, and Alice allows her to return home for a week. She's devastated by her father's death, but unable to cry, which scares her family and friends. Noor never comes to visit her family. By rights, he should have been one of the primary mourners, I guess because of his engagement to Soraya, but he never shows. The simmering anger that made Soraya spit in Alice's dinner that night grows because she was robbed of her last time to spend with her father. She fantasizes about more gruesome deaths for Alice and breaks an heirloom bowl. Alice says they will stop writing to Noor since he hasn't written in so long. She doesn't want Soraya to look desperate, she says. Then Alice says that Soraya can no longer go home at all anymore. After all, Timothy will be arriving soon. Alice has a dinner party at which one of the guests is the head of the teacher's college, and Soraya hears that Noor didn't lose his place just because there was no place. He lost his place because Alice requested it. You see, Alice's excuse is that Soraya was still settling in, and if Noor comes home to go to school, Soraya will be distracted by romance and planning her wedding. It would be so much better for Soraya to stay on with Alice for another year or two. So, this is where it gets good, and if you don't want to know what's happening, this is probably the time to get off and go do something else, and I'll see you later. When Noor's next letter arrives, Alice says that Noor has broken off their engagement. Soraya grabs the letter and reveals that she can, in fact, read. She reads the note for herself and finds that Noor is talking about things that make no sense. He's saying that Soraya broke off their engagement, that she had a new boyfriend in the district. He's returning all of her letters to her. She threatens Alice with a fireplace poker and drives her upstairs. Once Alice has barricaded herself in a room, Soraya destroys Timothy's room. While Alice is breaking down the mess. Breaking down the mess? I don't think that's what I intended to say. Like cleaning up the mess. Breaking down in the mess, probably. Soraya goes downstairs and realizes that Alice left the drawer where she kept Noor's letters open. Soraya is able to read all of their correspondence and discovers that Alice has been writing to Noor pretending to be Soraya. She wrote him sexy romantic letters and that Noor had been writing back to her, but Alice had pretended to Soraya not to have gotten them. After Soraya takes her final pages from Alice's desk, Fatima's ghost and Rosa's portrait both tell Soraya to look. Soraya does and finds a letter from a hospital in England explaining how Timothy's treatment is going. Timothy is in London, but there's no job, no girl, no visit to the Cape. Timothy is refusing to speak, shows no interest in learning to walk again, and has only one arm. Then Soraya finds a telegram telling Alice that Timothy is at death's door and to hurry to England to say goodbye. Soraya gets Alice from Timothy's room and forces her to write 2 letters. The first was to the head of the teacher's college to ask that he restore Noor's place to him. The second is to the appraiser to tell him to give the proceeds from the sale of Rosa, who Soraya realizes was Fatima in her youth, to Soraya. Alice returns to England to be with Timothy at the end of his life. She writes to Soraya to tell her that she will not be returning to South Africa, as she does not want to leave the place where Timothy is buried. Soraya brings a new begins a new career as a writer and artist, and she writes and arts together, turning the lines of her stories into illustrations of the stories themselves. Many of the stories she writes are her own fancies, but some are the stories of others, such as the story slash drawing of a small girl stealing grapes from a table, even though she knows she will be beaten for it, which turns out to be one of her mother's memories. She isn't telling, her mother didn't say, write this story. She wrote the story, and her mother's like, how did you know about that? That's one of my memories. She and Nora reunite, and Nora was reoffered the place at the Teachers' College. Nora and the other teachers are banding together against a recently elected official with frightening ideas. Now, I'm no student of South African history, so I don't know if this was a national position. The Prime Minister at the time of this book was Jan Smuts, who was elected in 1919, so I don't think so, because why would they be fighting against somebody being elected when the election already happened? Or someone more local, or the location of, or since the location of the story is not actually spelled out, if the politician is a fictional construct meant to foreshadow the rise of eugenics and, as Rimmer puts it in the Meltdown episode Red Dwarf, the runners-up in World War II. But this was definitely, if not that favorite book that I read in 2025. It was really close. So Cape Fever and Nadia Davis. You know, I'm sure if you've been watching my videos, you know the drill. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later. And if you have any recommendations, please leave them in the comments. Thank you.